In today's video, we're going to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Now I've watched the movie, courtesy and thank you to Marvel UK. They invited me to an event last night. Yo, Warstu, throw a picture up. Pow, there you go. So, what is good YouTube? Warstu here. If you are new around, and make sure you subscribe to never miss any of the Marvel, DC, Kaiju, Monsterverse-based content that we try to cover here on the Warstu channel on a daily basis. If you could, subscribe to the channel, turn notifications on, and let me know if you've already seen this movie. Was it good? Because it is a little bit of a staggered release. It comes out here in the UK on the 3rd of May. I believe it's already out in some places in the world. And I think the official release is May the 5th, 2023, which is Friday. Also, if you could, check us out on Instagram at Warstu to see the beautiful face behind the beautiful voice. And if you could, check us out on Twitter, WarstuG. Right, let's get into this video. So, we're basically going to go over the whole plot, go over the ending, and then go over what I think in no particular order. So, let's break it down. Now, it's worth saying, I am bluntly honest when it comes to reviews. And I can honestly recommend this movie. For me, it's one of Marvel's strongest movies ever. Not just strongest, not just the best movie since Endgame. Although I do think it is Marvel's best movie since Endgame. I think it does stack up there as a very good movie because it hits on all levels. It's funny, but not in a over-the-top way funny, where other kind of movies where they try to take the jokes too far. These jokes mostly land. It hits on every scale. Emotional, sad, savage. I don't know how they got this into PG-13 because this is a pretty brutal movie for some people in certain ways. And it's actually got a narrative plot point that it's pretty solid throughout. And yes, if you follow the channel, the plot leaks were right and the post-credit plot leaks were right. They were all right. But like I said, guys, that doesn't ruin anything because I literally forgot everything as soon as I started watching the movie. So this movie starts pretty strong throughout. We have Peter Quill, aka Star-Lord, who is still reeling from the loss of his Gamora. Although there is still a Gamora, but it's a completely different Gamora who doesn't even know who he is to a certain degree. So he's still a bit moping around from the start of the movie, I guess you could say, and throughout. But towards the end, he finally accepts he can't be with Gamora because it's not his Gamora. So Adam Warlock pretty much kicks into this movie straight away. So you may have seen a scene going around YouTube where Adam Warlock is in nowhere. He's fighting Drax, he's fighting Nebula, and so on. So Adam Warlock's mission, he's got out of the cocoon from the last movie, even though it's technically taken him years. And the High Evolutionary wants Rocket Raccoon because he is the smartest creature that Mr. High Evolutionary has ever made. And his brain cannot be replicated, so he essentially wants Rocket. So the main narrative of this movie from the sovereign Adam Warlock, Aisha's point of view is they're trying to get Rocket for their master, who is the High Evolutionary, who we find out later on in the movie created the Sovereigns. So in theory, the High Evolutionary is the master to the Sovereigns. And the movie kind of treats Adam Warlock as a baby to a certain degree. I don't think it's over the top. It's fine. And it kind of treats it like Aisha is Adam Warlock's mother. So during this battle, Rocket gets injured so bad to the point where he nearly dies. And the main narrative of the movie is there's something in Rocket that's a kill switch and they need to disable it, or else he's going to die. So the majority of the movie is going to try and find the code, the password, however you want to phrase it, to stop Rocket from dying. And they go to multiple places, but in the end, and they have to get on the High Evolutionary ship in order to get the code, in order to save Rocket. And that is pretty much the main narrative. Although I've kind of brushed across it, through it, that's pretty much the main narrative. And throughout the movie, Adam Warlock keeps trying to fight the Guardians. He keeps trying to fight them. And so ultimately, he ends up joining the Guardians and helping the Guardians take down the High Evolutionary. So there's a lot of animal cruelty in this movie, and it nearly brought me to tears to a certain degree because it's kind of like it throws you off a little bit. It's kind of kind of makes you cringe a little bit to a certain degree. So I think all the comments when people said it made them cry is kind of to do with that. And kind of to do with, by the end of the movie, you finally understand and realize this is the last time that this certain team of Guardians will be working together in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it's the last time they're going to be together. So when they said they didn't need to like act to cry at the end, they were actually really crying. It's kind of cute in a way. So throughout this movie, one thing I noticed is, I mean, you might say I'm wrong, I didn't notice any issues with the VFX and CGI. That was an issue in multiple Marvel movies, Thor 4, Ant-Man 3, but I didn't see any VFX issues in this movie at all, which it does take you away from it. And yes, James Gunn's wife is in this movie, but to be fair, I think she did pretty good, Jennifer Holland. I think she did a pretty good role. I don't mind him throwing her in everywhere. There were a few comments before the movie release saying that it takes you away from the movie. Nah, it doesn't take you away from the movie at all. So ultimately, they save Rocket, and then the only way to save the day is to get Rocket to stop running. And then he goes and rescues everyone. There's a bunch of kids on the High Evolutionary ship because he's trying to make the perfect Earth, hence Counter Earth. He blows up the whole of Counter Earth because he's realized he has to do it again because it wasn't the perfect Earth. He's essentially trying to replicate Earth to a certain degree, hence why he's doing all these animal testing and trying to create the perfect animals, hence why he's after Rocket's brain, because Rocket is god tier. Rocket is the GOAT. He's like so clever that he can't understand why Rocket is like the special one. So he's trying to get Rocket. So at the end, there's a badass fight. To be fair, there's a lot of badass fights throughout this movie, which is pretty cool. And in the end, Rocket shows that he's a Guardian. He had a chance to kill the High Evolutionary, which I'm glad they didn't kill him off, because that's an issue I do have with Marvel movies, is Marvel generally kills off every single villain. They didn't kill off High Evolutionary, but they did essentially take him out right at the end of the movie, which I think is needed. I think it's good sometimes when they do that. Leave the villain alive and don't kill the villain all the time like they do, because that is a little bit annoying. So yes, Sylvester Stallone is in this movie, aka with the Avengers part. Gamora, throughout the movie, gets more open and more open. And towards the end of the movie, she feels more like the OG Gamora, but technically she's not. But right at the end, she's like, yeah, Peter, I kind of wish I was your Gamora. To a certain degree, she's getting at that. And the movie ends the way everyone expected it to. No one dies. I don't really understand why people thought someone was going to die. Just because it's the end of a franchise to a certain degree doesn't mean anyone has to die. Although a lot of them, Rocket nearly died, Drax nearly died, Quill nearly died, literally nearly died right at the end. But Adam Warlock, who was trying to attack the Guardians throughout the movie, but because the Guardians showed him humanity and showed him they are humans, he ends up saving Peter Quill, because Peter Quill's in space and he's like just about to die. He's like frozen to a certain degree. And Adam Warlock brings him back to life, and that is his redemption arc. I think they could have treated Adam Warlock a bit better. I think he should have been a bit more powerful, but they do explain in the movie that he got out of the cocoon too early, hence why he has some baby characteristics, and it all makes sense to me, at least. So none of the Guardians died, although a lot of them nearly died, and that's why the marketing for this movie was pretty cool, because everyone was like, yeah, Rocket dies, no, Drax dies, no, Nebula dies. I don't understand why anyone had to die, and when you watch the movie, no one actually had to die at all. So the post-credit scenes are exactly like we said before. Finally, Peter Quill retires from the... No, he doesn't retire, though some people might make out he does. So he's having some time away from said Guardians and finally goes back to Earth to see his grandpapa, who he hasn't seen since, I think they said, since he was 8-year-old, which is a hell of a long time. Really long time. So one interesting thing is on the newspaper, it said alien abduction, Kevin Bacon reveals, and that's pretty funny that it's on there. But what's cool is his grandpapa knew exactly who he was the instant that he seen him. That was so cool, the way they did that. And the other post-credit scene, ending scene, is essentially them all saying goodbye and setting up a new Guardians. And Groot comes out and says, I love you guys. Like, he actually talks properly. And the audience gasps when he said that, which I find pretty cool. And Cosmo, the dog, pretty cool role, using Cosmo's psychic powers to save the day. Every Guardians member in this movie had a part to play, and there is a lot of callbacks. There's a callback to Yondu, who has essentially died, and he essentially tells Michael Rooker's, I think his name, Krelin's character, how to use the power. You've got to use your heart. So there is like a Yondu cameo for like a few seconds, which I do think it is pretty cool how they managed to get a bunch of things in this movie, which maybe, or maybe not, you might see coming. But if you listen to this kind of video, then you definitely will see it coming. So they discuss who is going to be the new leader of the Guardians. And it's finally time for Rocket, who is voiced by Bradley Cooper, to be in charge of the Guardians. And the way it looks like is this will be the new team. Rocket leading, Groot also, Adam Warlock, Cosmo, Fael, who's like a child in this movie who you see throughout. They don't really explain who she is till right towards the end. Then Sean Gunn's character looks like he's going to be some kind of Yondu-based character. So it looks like Krillin will be part of the new Guardians, but that doesn't mean there's actually going to be another Guardians movie. It's just set up in a way that if there is, the Guardians will return. And yes, the film card did say the legendary Star-Lord will return. So I am expecting him to show up in either Kang's Dynasty or Secret Wars. Although a lot of these people, actors in the movie, like Dave Bautista, Zoe, etc., have said they're done and dusted, I can see them all returning to a certain degree to appear in Avengers 5 or Avengers 6 because that payday will be too big to say no to. So it is cool that Star-Lord finally returned to Earth. I don't know why it took him so long. I mean, he could have done that in any of the Guardians. Well, not the first one because that's technically where he started. But it's a pretty damn cool movie. I obviously haven't mentioned Mantis much, but Mantis, they're all cool. There's two. It's a 2.5 hour movie, so there's so much to explain. And I'm not really much of a. I don't really review movies. I just give my thoughts. So it is cool. Gamora goes back with the Avengers. Mantis kind of goes on her own way with some creatures that she tamed with her abilities, and it ends in a perfect way. As I've said before, I'm not the biggest fan of the Guardians, but I think it's one of the best movies Marvel's ever made. This is my honest review. I really think it's a really cool movie because it hits on so many different levels. So I'm really interested to what the general audience says because I don't really care what the critics say because technically I guess you could say I'm a critic because I see movies early. I don't really care what critics think. It's more about what the audience thinks for me. So I hope it's a positive reaction. But as we know, movies and everything in life, it's all subjective. So I'd be shocked if it didn't get a general overall good reaction because such a badass movie, so many savage scenes. The jokes are pretty cool. The action scenes are pretty cool. The narrative is pretty deep and dark in certain places. Everything just hits. And it does look like they're setting up a new Guardians team, which, yes, could be the Annihilators, who are a cosmic group, almost like the Guardians. And yes, there is technically no multiversal ties, although the new team, if they are trying to set up the Annihilators kind of reference by having like Adam Warlock, etc., you could push that if you wanted to. That's why I think it could do really well, is because it's really got no ties to the multiversal saga stuff, which every movie nowadays is multiverse based. And I think people are getting kind of sick and tired with it. But I really hope Zoe plays Gamora. I really hope she turns up again because I really like that actor. Drax, Dave Bautista, could turn up again, but he's pretty much done with Disney. I really do like his character. Drax the Destroyer ends up becoming a father in the movie because he's going to look after the children that are on the High Evolutionary ship. It's a pretty cool movie, guys. So hopefully I've kind of explained roughly what the plot is, the ending, which is only what people care about, and I've given you all the spoilers, which based on how the internet works, which is the only thing people care about. So like always, guys, let us know what you think once you've watched the movie. And like always, I do read the comments when people say, you've ruined the movie for me. No, because if you click on a video that says ending explained or spoilers or leaks, it's kind of in the title. I do read all the comments, but if you're going to say I've ruined the movie for you, when realistically, if you click a video that says spoilers or leaks, you know what you're getting. I do give spoiler warnings as well. But let me know what you actually think once you've watched this movie. Like I said, it is already out in some countries. Comes out in the UK on Wednesday. Comes out in America Friday. There will be early screenings in America on Thursday. And I guess once I post this, which will be Wednesday afternoon, it will be out here in the United States of England. So whilst editing this video, I realized I forgot to mention the most saddest scene of the movie for most people. So, as we know, once you've watched this movie, Rocket is an experiment. There's also other animals and creatures that have been created. There's a character called Floor, Teeth, and Lilith. And that is Rocket's friends. Until they are yeah, they literally and that's where the animal cruelty and stuff like that comes in. And I presume that's the most saddest scene for most people. I did see a bunch of people that cry and had teary eyes. I always like to look around in cinema occasionally, but that's probably one of the saddest scenes. And during the whole does he die, doesn't he die scene, there is a scene where it's all white and he gets to see all his again being Lilith, Floor, and Tooth. And he wants to join them, but Lilith is like, no, you can't join them. Obviously, they're dead. So the premise is he wants to join them, he's dead, because he doesn't see the point, because he's just an experiment. And they explain to him, no, you've got lots of cool stuff to do in the real world. And I presume that's where most people will get sad, because it is a kind of cringy moment. It's kind of like a hits you in the gut kind of moment. I don't know how you kind of react to these things, but I think it was a pretty cool scene, to be fair, still. So likewise, guys, once you watch the movie, let us know down below. What do you think? Do you disagree with me? I guarantee some people are going to come out and say it's the worst thing they've ever seen in their life. Why? Because negativity sells more than positivity does. At least it does on the internet. So likewise, guys, check us out on Instagram at Warstu. Check us out on Twitter at WarstuG. And I will catch you in another video very soon. Catch you later.